And we are live. Welcome, everyone. My name is Britt, and I'm the marketing manager at e-tron Technologies. We're very excited that you're here with us today for our next Talk to an Expert. We're going live every last Thursday of each calendar month, so please keep your agenda open. Follow us on LinkedIn so you can keep up with all our announcements. If you miss one of them, they're on Spotify, YouTube, and on our website. And so for those who don't know us, e-tron is an international technology scale-up dedicated to making software-defined vehicles a reality for OEMs worldwide. Our house rules: if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and they'll be answered at the very end. So today we have Gunnlaugur, our external expert on the podcast. He is the founder and CEO of Enzo. Hello, could you please tell us a bit more about yourself and Enzo?
Thank you. Hope you can hear me. So I'm G. As you said, founder of Enzo. Everyone calls me G because my name is completely unpronounceable. And we make tires for electric cars. We're almost a 7-year-old company. And what we develop is, of course, better tires for electric vehicles, focus on extending electric range, because everyone wants more range, saving costs, carbon, and headaches when it comes to charging. But on the flip side, we also look to develop tires that are more durable. And this is because tires have a massive impact on the air we breathe, microplastics everywhere, in particular in our oceans, and also are embedded with toxicity. So tires are a complicated product. It's a safety product. It's a product we need. We would not, I think, since the invention of the wheel, we've relied on some form of mobility to get us or things to us. But the problem right now is that tires are kind of like the last major pollution issue that still is derived from all vehicles, including electric cars. And so we set up Enzo basically to develop better solutions.
Cool, thank you. So let's dive straight in. So could you tell us a bit more about the most recent scientific data on the environmental impact on tires, please?
Oh, that's a good question. So tires affect us in many different ways. I should tell you the backstory, of course. Tires are principally made from fossil fuels and carbon-intensive materials. So even before you even get them, they have already made a massive impact on our planet. So when they're, of course, equipped on your car, several things happen. But one particular thing happened is that they don't last forever. So they wear down over time. And this tire wear or tire emissions or tire pollution contributes to many environmental impacts and human impacts. The first and foremost, which is very noteworthy, is in terms of air pollution. So tires today in the UK, according to the environmental agency, which is called DEFRA in this country, measures that we're breathing in more PM 2.5 and PM 10 from tires than tailpipes. And it's interesting to note we've been regulating tailpipes for over 50 years now in this world, but there's no law anywhere on this planet that says you have to make your tires last longer or reduce this amount of pollution. So every tire eventually wears down over time. It loses about 1.5 kilos of stuff. And that ranges from ultrafine particles to PM 2.5s, the PM 10s I just mentioned, and also larger particles. And this is an air pollution problem in particular when it comes to urban cities. Because as we drive in towns, a lot of tire dust is generated. Even when we stay at home and things are brought to us by delivery vehicles, they are still generating this pollution even if we would not move anyway. So tire pollution and air pollution ties together. But this pollution is, once it's also been generated, is also a microplastic. Tires are made out of fossil fuels, just like bottles are. And so, when you basically create small particles of something that's a microplastic and you put it in the environment, you can never really catch it again. It stays in the environment, and we're aggregating vast quantities of tire pollution. So one of the scientific reasons, besides simply knowing how much air pollution is generated from tires, is also looking at the fact that estimates generate that about 28% of all primary microplastics in our ocean. And one of the largest sources of primary microplastic pollution from the Western world is tire pollution. And in some areas, this is even worse. I mean, for example, in the Baltic, the numbers are even scarily higher than that. And so we have an air pollution, a pollution that both is an air pollution and then also microplastic pollution, which sounds, there's nothing else in the world that does both like that in the quantities that we're talking about. And then, of course, the final major impact of tires is that, besides remaining in our environment for so long, is that tire particles are also embedded with a number of chemicals which are used to make the product in the first place. And some of them are toxic. So some very recent studies, particularly in California, have highlighted the toxicology impact of tire emissions on aquatic environments, in particular on salmon and trout populations. And this is due to a particular raw material called 6-PPD, and effectively devastates the aquatic environment. And it's very simple. It's when those tires remain on the road, they have a certain chemical change as exposed to sunlight and oxygen. And then when it rains, this thing gets washed into these rivers and estuaries and have a major impact on the aquatic life, which we then also are exposed to as well. So the problem with tires is it's complex. And this is just during its life. And at the end of life, of course, we pile them up and we tend to burn them, which will have an additional environmental impact as well. So the problem is wherever you look at the tire ecosystem, you will have issues, but they're addressable. The question is you need to, of course, not just make a better product, but you have to incentivize the change to happen. And this is what we're doing at Enzo.
Thank you. Thank you for this in-depth analysis. Could you please tell me how electric vehicles need better tires to support their rapid adoption?
Absolutely. So generally cars come with at least 4, if not 5 tires, the one in the boot. So when you have an electric car, there are 2 main elements that differ from the internal combustion vehicles. And of course, all vehicles generate tire pollution. So long as they're equipped with tires, they will wear down. But when it comes to electric cars, they are heavier in particular. And that weight, from a physics standpoint, puts more pressure on the tires, which means that they wear faster. But they also have really high torque. So the amount of energy that is being propelled onto the roads via the tires is also generally higher or more accelerated than on traditional fossil fuel cars that don't have that acceleration and torque. So we have a situation now where electric vehicles are generally, and this is not in every single use case, but generally, on average, electric vehicles wear tires faster because of the use cases, because of the weight, the torque. And the numbers vary a little bit because some people will, of course, own the Tesla and drive it very, very carefully, even though it's a very heavy car, and they will correspondingly may not wear tires as much as someone else. But overall, when you cannot discount the physics here, you have then a situation which, if you look at the numbers according to Michelin, this is stated figures from one of the leading tire companies, is up to 20% faster tire wear from EVs than non-EVs, equivalent non-EVs. But according to Goodyear, it's actually up to 50% faster tire wear. These are not our numbers; these are the industry numbers out there. But I can confirm that from the rollouts and the trials we've been doing with large EV fleets in London, these numbers do not surprise us at all. And in some instances, they are even higher than that. Now, when you buy a car, you don't really get a choice of the tire that comes with it most often. You do get a choice when you come to replacing it. And at that point, of course, consumer choice becomes very important. People don't want to lose the electric range they currently have because they pick up an inferior tire, but they also shouldn't be choosing tires that generate even more pollution. And that's also a key element where education and discussion about these topics can really help. And of course, there are solutions. I don't want to be the doom and gloom bunny. I simply want to say to people that consumer choice and building appropriate tires for their vehicles is available. But it's as the topic is, we need to talk about tires, and this is what we do. And so I urge everyone here to look at this. And of course, we're on a journey where we can never make these products last forever. I think that would be strange if we promised that. But we can make them a lot better than they are today.
Thank you. Could you tell us how Enzo is meeting this challenge by developing solutions to extend EV range and reduce tire pollution?
Uh, Absolutely. So two categories: range and pollution. Let's talk about range. A tire, effectively, on an electric vehicle, particularly when it goes slowly, is one of the main culprits of energy losses. So as you make the tire more energy efficient, just as you would make a light bulb more energy efficient, you will consume less energy with your EV. And that would directly translate into more range. So when we are enhancing the energy performance of our tires, you get more range. But even if you never even use that additional range we have provided, then for every single mile that you run that vehicle with a better tire, you will save costs per mile because you won't consume as much energy per mile. You won't have to charge it as often. You will also save carbon, particularly when that carbon comes from the energy generation of burning fossil fuels, because sadly, we still don't drive every EV on this planet with sunshine and wind power. So ultimately, by making the tires more energy efficient, we can deliver those benefits, and we do this through the chemistry of the tire design, the lightweighting of the tire, the aerodynamics of the tire, and then being effectively laser focused on the performance needs of electric vehicles. So when we started this, of course, the journey was very different. When we started Enzo, there were barely any electric vehicle focused tires in the market. And what's happened, of course, is that the car makers, the large fleets, and individuals are now understanding that EVs behave differently and they need a different subset of products here. And that's what we provide. And being exclusively focused on electric vehicles and providing them directly to customers means that there's no moat between us and experiencing right the feedback from our users. And of course, that gives us additional data that we can then use to make the tires even better. So that comes to the range, and so saving kilowatts, carbon, and cash. When it comes to durability, of course, as we talked about, tire pollution is a problem. It's unregulated. Again, I said there's no law anywhere in the world that says you can't make a really bad tire when it comes to pollution, which
That's
is strange.
crazy.
So and technology exists to get rid of half the tires in the market. There's no need to have that the tires that are worse than this performance even anymore in the market, and all the manufacturers could switch to making them better. It's just there's a strange financial incentive in the industry not to do so. So there are ways to counter even the worst excesses of this industry already today. But as we, of course, are looking at electric vehicles and the higher wear tear of torque and weight and other aspects of electric cars, we really have to make sure that when we adopt electric vehicles into the ecosystem, that we also look at the tires and how we can make them even better as well, along with the improvements the electric car gives us. And we're very focused on enhancing and enabling adoption of electric cars because we don't want the tires to be the Achilles heel of electric vehicles. We don't want to have a Dieselgate or Tiregate scenario where we all switch to electric cars and then air pollution in cities gets worse because we're already, as I said, breathing more tire dust than tailpipe dust already. And that's only going to increase if we don't address tire pollution. So ultimately for us, you need to engineer the tire tread. And of course, the tire tread is the stuff that touches the road is where the pollution is generated. So in this respect, what Enzo is developing is highly durable compounds that still keep the energy efficiency, which gives you the extra range, but also then tackles that the emission side of things. And so it's a combination. And of course, there are so-called target conflicts here, in the sense that it's hard to do both at the same time unless you start to change the paradigm. The paradigm change is, of course, that Enzo doesn't focus its business model on selling just more tires. Enzo's mission is to solve the tire pollution aspect and range aspect of tires for electric cars by supplying them directly to consumers. And when we sell them directly to consumers, and in particular when we sell them directly to consumers and then charge them per mile, we are financially incentivized to make those tires last as long as possible. Because if we charge a penny a mile, every additional mile is an additional penny. So for me, the incentive then is always skewed in the sense that we can deliver these highly more costly products that cost us more to make, but towards the end customer, they pay nothing up front and they only pay for what they use. And now suddenly I've created a different incentive program than the current industry operates on, making sure that I want to make these tires more durable at every single turn. And that is how we basically use the power of the new business model to empower the reduction in pollution.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your time for this lovely talk. We are going to look at the comments because I've seen quite a few questions popping in. Some of these questions are from Etronians themselves because they were very intrigued by this talk today. So let's start. Someone asked, what are tyre makers, including Enzo, doing about this, and how can they reduce the particle emissions?
Well, tyre emissions and particle emissions, first and foremost, we have to make the volume less. We have to reduce the total volume of them. And of course, that's by making them more durable. But we don't want to make them more durable, more durable and then perhaps more toxic. So we have to also consider how do we reduce the toxicity. But also when we think about the smaller particles as the larger particles, the smaller particles, the PM2.5s rather than the PM10s, and also the larger particles, and then the nanoparticles, which are even finer particles, they are considered at the moment more dangerous because we are breathing in these PM2.5s, PM10s, and nanoparticles already. So we have to look at not only reducing the volume of stuff that goes out, but how the particle generation happens, but also reduce the toxicity of the particles themselves. We also have to consider in the longer run, how do we make these particles biodegradable so they don't end up just aggregating in our ecosystem forever? It's a very difficult topic, but what we say always is by addressing the problem first and saying, look, we admit that there's a problem and these are the key areas where we need to address it. You then start to build basically solutions around that. But the problem is at the moment this is not a topic that tire industry really wants to talk about. And so what the other tire industry are doing about it? Well, I've not seen any major tire company ever even use the word tire pollution. And they are not very keen when asked to address this point head on.
Thank you. Someone asked, can we as drivers do anything about it? I mean, you kind of answered already, but if there's anything else you would like to add.
If you want to reduce tire pollution, you could drive less. Let's be absolutely clear. If you decide not to drive from A to B, you are not generating any pollution. You could drive more carefully, reduce your acceleration and braking in particular. And driving less aggressively will put less strain on your tires. So these are all solutions we can do. When it comes to replacement, and this is somewhere where the US is ahead of Europe. In Europe, we don't have any regulations or market standards which say that this tire will last you this long. In America, they do. So in America, strangely, you can go and know roughly how long a certain tire will last you. But in America, they won't tell you how much range it will give you or take away from your EV. So they'll have a label that says it'll go 40,000 miles, but they don't say if you'll lose 10% of your range. The flip side in Europe, they'll tell you how much energy efficiency the tire has or poorly, so you can make adjustment on the range you'll keep or lose, but they won't tell you how long it lasts. And to some extent, we have to bring these two markets together. We have to give customers the know-how of how long these products are going to last, but also how much they're going to affect their range. Because otherwise, we'll never solve this.
Thank you. Sertan, he's an Etronian. How did you first identify this problem and why do you want to fix it?
Good question. We started Enzo, we were already at the point when we started Enzo in 2016 aware of impact of tires on the environment, that we were already looking at solutions for that. And what was the culmination of setting up Enzo was really we saw the adoption of electric vehicles were growing already then exponentially. And we didn't see that the rest of the industry was really stepping up to the plate to address it. And so to some extent, we started Enzo because we knew where the problem was. We had ideas of how to solve it. And of course, it was almost a challenge that we put to ourselves, is that if we could make a better tire that is more energy efficient and more durable than some of the big names, then of course they should do as well. But just like we didn't have electric cars before we had Tesla, they were more than capable of building electric vehicles before Tesla arrived. But it required that kind of catalyst to change the industry. And so from when we set Enzo, we're hoping to be that catalyst. And of course, if the rest of the tire industry follows or does it in a different way, we're happy to collaborate with anyone in the major tire makers. And we have had discussions with many of them. The point is, of course, is that the consensus is pretty much both internal in those companies and external, is that they're simply not going to react fast enough because they have a number of legacy hurdles they have to encompass. And being a pure play tire company only focused on EVs with a direct sales channels to our customers, we created a different paradigm.
Thank you. Someone else asked, electric cars on our roads are increasing each day. How do you think the manufacturers will cope with the demand of new electric tires? Or how will they help independents manage electric car owners who will change their tires to non-OE because of cost?
Good question. I think I got the gist of that one. The big question.
Yeah, it's long.
I'll tell you this. So when you buy an electric car, suddenly you don't change the oil. You don't have an air filter, unless it's the HEPA air filter that filters the air conditioning system, but not for the engine. So your maintenance of a fossil fuel car used to be a lot higher than it is for an electric car, but your maintenance on the tire level has increased to compensate that. When you look at a Tesla owner or Tesla in general, for example, because they are so ahead of everyone else, it's a good outlier to show you where this market is moving. Is that a substantial portion of their after servicing care is simply replacing tires for the vehicles, because again, there's not much maintenance beyond the tires themselves unless you've hit something or there's a recall on some technical element. So a substantial part of the Tesla aftermarket care is actually just dealing with tires, but they're not growing the stores fast enough to cope with all the Teslas they have sold to the market, and nor will the other OEMs either, because they don't control their own aftermarket. So the question for us is, you can go through, and a customer then who wants to keep the range they have at the moment has to kind of guaranteed go back to Tesla, particularly in the United States, because it's hard for them to get those tires again. And ultimately, what Enzo is trying to do is to alleviate some of that pressure by delivering tires directly to customers. So you're going to keep your range and you're going to tackle the pollution as best we can. But ultimately, the cost price, very, very important note here with us, we do not want to charge a premium for this. When it comes to selling our tires directly to customers, because we sell them directly, it means we're not sharing the pie with multiple different intermediaries. It means that we can invest more in the product to begin with, which makes it better. And on the flip side is we don't have to charge a margin on top. And because we can be competitive to all the other tire companies when we roll out, it means that effectively customers shouldn't pay more. They should have the tires affordable, they should be available, they should be efficient, they should be durable, and they should be sustainable. And ultimately, we're on a long journey here to address very complicated problems. But I would also like to add one other point is that, we decided very early on in our stage to become a B Corp. So we're the only tire company in the world that is a B Corporation. And this is kind of signifies our direction of travel. We want to lead, but we don't mind others following, because we're keen that we solve a problem. We will not make every tire on this planet. So we will only hope that we get the other companies to move faster in our direction.
Thank you. Mukait Tronian is saying, hi, thanks for this event. How does air pollution differ between urban areas and motorways?
Well, air pollution when it comes to tires is a good question here. This is still I would call it an open scientific research area. What is known when it comes to between urban and non-urban is that you generate more particles in urban areas, because it stop-start traffic in particular, than you would do on a highway, rolling on the highway, if you then condense it per mile. So per mile, more tire pollution is generated in urban areas than on highways. There still is a discussion on the particle distribution here, and that's not been nailed down at all, because, of course, it has a lot of influences. Is it raining? Is the road surface rough or is the road surface smooth? And etc. So the multiple factors that generate here. But the general tendency of direction is to say that when the vehicle is running on a highway, it tends to generate more quantities of potentially finer particles on a percentage level, but overall less particles per mile. While of course, when you're in a stop-start traffic in cities, it's both finer particles and larger particles, but overall more particles. So urban and non-urban environments differ, but even it differs depending on which road you drive. So American roads are different from European roads when it comes to the textures. And so the emissions that the same tire, the same vehicle, and the same driver, and the same weather, and the same everything else still would be different depending on the different roads. What is, however, very important to say here is that it doesn't so matter, because you need to simply reduce all this pollution. The finer pollution, okay, would perhaps impact us as humans because we breathe this in, but the coarser pollution goes into our waterways, estuaries, and is carried into our oceans, and is also then consumed by the aquatic life form. So to try to say that it's better the finer particles or the coarser particles, it's somewhat of a, well, it's almost like a wrong economy, because tires impact everyone. What we need to do is reduce these particles wherever we can.
Thank you. Annette is saying, is there a motion to inform policymakers about the problem of tire pollution? Is this problem on their agenda?
Good question. I would say that Brussels, in particular, and the European Commission has been looking at this for years. They are also confronted with probably one of the best lobby groups of the tire industry in not changing this or not putting this on their radar. So I would say there's a lot of discussion in Brussels, in the UK, with DEFRA and the environmental agencies here in the UK, and also in the US, particularly California, where tire emissions are being addressed. I would say at a faster pace than potentially in Europe. I would say one thing is this, because I would say back in 2016, when we started Enzo, there was very limited discussion about the impact of tire pollution. This has, since 2017-18, this really kicked off post-Dieselgate. So Dieselgate, of course, led to a lot of research being done on air pollution and the pollution that came out of tailpipes. And as a result, a lot of researchers started looking at other aspects of air pollution. So that's one reason here, but also COVID, because suddenly we stopped driving, suddenly the air got so clean, and we could suddenly, Los Angeles suddenly realized it had mountain ranges around it. So you have a situation where the environment that we have just seen over the last 5 years has really enabled research to happen, but we're still at the very early stage of identifying the research. But the fact is that we don't have all the answers to all the research we would like to do shouldn't hold us back from regulating this or start to address it from the product level. We shouldn't wait until we know everything, because that would be a false economy. We don't want a situation where suddenly Oslo will soon probably only have electric cars in its city center, and still will have substantial amount of air pollution. Well, where does it come from? Well, we kind of know. So we should address these problems as soon as possible. And so awareness is actually key. Starting to talk about them means that people can measure it. Once they measure it, they can regulate it. And then, of course, we can have commercially successful solutions, because they have to be commercially successful. We're not saying that the tire industry has to go away. We couldn't live without them. But we just need to go better.
Thank you so much. Well, those are all the questions for today. Thank you so much for joining and answering all the questions and raising awareness about tires. Thank you. Have a lovely day, everyone. And thank you for joining, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you.